Hello, everyone, and welcome to Visual Reflux, Season 2, Episode 1.
And a grand
my name
anniversary
is Andrew.
to you. Yeah.
Yes, a grand 7th anniversary. We'll get to that in a second here. My name is Andrew Wycliffe, and I write at the stopbutton.com.
And I'm Vernon Wiley, and I post over at comicsfondle.com.
And so this is the second episode of Visual Reflux. The first one, if you heard it, came out about a year and a week ago. And
they're real collector's items.
We got busy in between. So we never got back to a second episode, which is too bad. But given the state of the world, we think we can handle a podcast these days.
Yeah, it was almost like, extra time. And it was like, we'll call this coronavirus episode 2 or something like that, So it sounds work for me too, yeah. But, it's amazing how much it's trite to say that life has changed because it's changed for everybody around the world. But how it's affecting the media that we're interested in on this podcast, that's like some of the stuff we'll be exploring as we talk here for an hour or so.
Yeah, so let's see. You might know us from the Comics Fondle podcast. That's what it was called, right?
Near here. That's right. I love that. I love that one.
And so we're doing a little bit different things this time. We're going to have ads. We're going to have a couple ads, but it's 2020 and your podcast, the listener, should be able to skip ahead 30 seconds, if you know what I mean. So
Yep.
And so we're going to have an ad after this introduction, and then we are going to have an ad after the comics. And so we're going to do comics first and a little bit of news. But the point of I don't know where the news is going to be. But the point of this is if you are a Comics Fondle listener and you don't want to listen to us talk about movies or TV, you can just stop listening when the second ad starts, and you will not have missed any of the comics that we talk about. And so, so we are Comics Fondle. The podcast lasted about 5.5 or longer years, I would say, because we are the 7th anniversary of the first Comics Fondle episode, which I should have had a link ready for, but I don't. So we will see if I can come up with that while we're recording. If we can't, there will be one next time. But otherwise,
comicsfondle.com is still an up and running concern, isn't it?
It is still an up and running concern, and all the episodes are still available. I just don't have them in a nice way as of yet, but we will get to that point soon. So let's do this first commercial break now, and then we will be back and we will talk about COVID-19 a little bit and get into the comics, because nobody's talking about COVID-19. So
yeah, exactly. Nobody.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Later.
Okay, and hopefully that was a very interesting ad for you, because we have no idea what it was.
Preparation or something, yeah.
So Vern, let's talk about a little COVID before we get to the comics.
Yeah, really. I mean, COVID is it's changed everything. I mean, there's like almost no form of business in the world that COVID hasn't really changed one way or another. And comic books, like what happened to them? Like 2 months ago, most states had to institute a shutdown if you're a retail store. So in effect, Diamond had to stop distributing and the comic book companies had to stop producing. So everything was put, like in other businesses, in a virtual shutoff. Now I hear, is it next week or the week after, there's actually going to be a shipment of comics. And I was like, who's open? I mean, only these, Okefenokes in Denver or something? I mean, I live in Chicago. They're not open yet,
Well, yeah, anybody who, it's funny how we went from we shouldn't reopen and kill people to we're going to reopen and kill people. Like that conversation didn't matter, which
Right.
is
And
sort
don't
of
forget your
interesting.
fucking comics. Yeah. If you're going to go out and kill
Yeah.
yourself, get your fucking comic books. Yeah.
Yeah. Die for your local comic book shop. And I don't know, is it this week? I mean, Diamond says they've got a release this week.
Yes. And
But
that's the thing you would, but what is it? Here in Illinois, they got the thing where you can like pick up, or whatever, or they give curb service
okay.
to do at the restaurant, but you can't physically go into a non-essential retail business yet. So I'm like, okay, I could see this getting it out of the way. I call early to keep, so the dealer's got enough copies for you. I doubt he does because he's certainly not putting himself out on a limb right now. But I'm like, how odd is that when you can't walk into a shop and look at books? So hopefully this will change. Hopefully it'll change around because you're getting the comics, but it's just such a bizarre way to distribute right now.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really follow this, but I mean, there has been a bunch of news. DC like signed with another distributor when it looked like Diamond wasn't going to reopen because they didn't want their employees to die, but then Diamond decided they were willing to let their employees die. So
well, you know what? All the mechanisms are still in shape for Diamond, and it hasn't been too long. And I'd be willing to bet they could put together enough of a workforce to get started again. You know what I'm saying? Because even when you restart a business, how much of it is going to be there? Like half or maybe a little more. So it's quite possible they can get back into the swing of it. As a retailer, or I should say ex-retailer, when DC started talking about the two alternative distributions, my head just went gray because when we had multiple, well, that was a big thing when I opened up the shop. Multiple distributors were the norm, but it was getting narrowed down and eventually went down to Diamond. And I'll be honest with you, when you start getting more hands in the pot, it means, and especially all these different rules at the states, some dealers are going to have books, some are not. The guy across the street didn't get his UPS delivery, whatever. That's a very wicked, unpredictable roller coaster ride for any retailer.
Yeah, it's been a really bad time. So it's just kind of like the comics, if it were, if you were still running the shop, if I were still getting comics, I'd be thinking about it. But it's just weird to see it from afar, and
I should point out, Andrew and I still read comics. I mean, we are still into comics. It's just that we're not active participants in a shop or going to conventions or anything like that right now.
Yeah, we're not directly affected right now. Yeah. So
I go to these little shows before all this started, and I enjoyed those little one-horse comic shops with maybe 30 dealers or something like that, And I'd be buying nostalgic stuff, as you know, and you might have seen. So that's where I've been reading. All my stuff is not necessarily new unless it's some unusual file or a copy you get through your professional business. But we get good stuff.
We do get good stuff. We are going to be talking about some good comics, but we wanted to talk about a little bit of the COVID just because. So is there anything else we want to talk about with it, or just let it filter through with the rest of our amazing business?
Yeah, like the president says, it'll just go away. Well, we'll see what happens. I hope that everybody involved with comics can continue to pull a check sooner or later, although the freelance nature of the business made some of these people quick to go. I imagine they're trying to dig up other work right now, but it's going to be a different industry. What do you call it? When we said that some of these businesses on the precipice, comics publishing was certainly one, because we were arguing constantly about formats of comics and whether they go to trade paperbacks or is the floppy going to exist anymore? These are all real pertinent questions right now that are especially affected. And if comics, I think, are going to continue as an ongoing concern, formatting and distribution questions are really up in the air as to how they're going to look like if they continue to go on through the end of the year, I think. But anyway, shall we talk about comics? I guess
let's talk about some comics.
Yeah. Shall we? Now we got a couple of lists. Do you want me to just rattle through mine? Or are we taking turns or what?
Well, I didn't read Club 9, but I did read the next two on the list. So you get started.
Yeah, Club 9 was a project of mine. It was what's that word? Not sure. Not shonen, that's girls manga, I think, but it's kind of mature readers for that, so I hesitate to put it that. But it's kind of like Archie for millennials. It's called Club Nine, and it's kind of like semi-realistic, although very idealistic story about a young lady who comes from the farms and rural areas, has to go to Tokyo for college, and becomes part of the big city and gets herself a job as a hostess at the notorious Ginza strip in Tokyo, Japan, which I think is a place where they have pretty young hostesses that keep gentlemen busy and pour them drinks and light their smokes and just generally keep them conversational while they're there hanging out. And it's just a marvelous book. And it was really interesting at the time because Dark Horse, the publisher, had gotten 3 volumes out. And then obviously it didn't sell, which is really sad because then they put it as a serialized thing in, what's the name of that? Super Manga Blast, their young ladies anthology of comics. Again, too mature readers for young ladies, I'll tell you that. But it was serialized in there for like 15 or 20 issues, and I finished all those. And I have to say, the series gave me a nice warm, fuzzy feeling that I expected out of it. I like the main character, Haruo. She's really nice and energetic and very positive. And all their situations with her fellow young hostesses and going to college, and the gentleman she meets and the interesting situation she gets into were really kind of cool. I mean, a nice, unusual read and very welcome with all the splashiness of Japanese traditional comics, very kind of down to earth in a more spectacular way. But Haruo and all her boyfriends are a very interesting story, and I'm glad I went through it. I'm going to give kudos to Makoto Kobayashi. I think he's the creator on that one. Probably mangling the poor guy's name. He did a cat strip, which you may not be familiar with, called Where's Michael, which was his big thing in Japan about the adventures of a tabby house cat, which is pretty good stuff. But Club 9 is a little more serious. It deals with human issues, and it hit a warm spot in this old fart's heart. That's all I can say about that. But I'll let you come up to that next one. You got a copy of this book from our favorite war writer, Garth Ennis, right?
Yeah, so I read about Ennis doing a war comic for this press is called Dead Reckoning, but what they actually are is they are the comic arm of the, what are they?
Navy.
Naval, well, it's the Naval Institute Press.
Yeah.
So it is,
yeah, I think this is what part of Armed Services outreach in various medias.
Yeah, so they're a independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit professional military membership association.
Ooh.
So yeah, and so they've got Garth Ennis doing a war comic for him, which is awesome. So we got to read it. It actually comes out today. I'm looking at the Amazon page.
No kidding. All right.
So perfect timing for us. But yeah, Stringbags was just a fantastic Ennis war comic. It's 192-ish pages, so one of those, but it's in 3 parts versus sort of 6. So it gives Ennis time to do more story per part. Because if you listen to Comics Fondle, I talked about most of war stories that he did at Avatar, was it?
Yes, Avatar's brief.
And yeah, and how that book sort of had its art problems, and then it had its pacing problems as Ennis tried to adjust his structure to, I think it was 3 issues when he really needed 4. And so, but this, he gets 3 double-size issues, and he's got plenty of time. So it's a really great book. And our what do you call it in the publishing? We just call them
compliment.
Yeah, no, yeah, but it's a galley.
A galley copy.
It's a galley. Yeah. So the galley copy, the art was not finished. So as you read it, the art slowly got back down to just the pencils by the end, I think.
Right.
But I can't wait to read it again sometime in full color.
Yeah, they give you the full boat in the beginning, and then it kind of recedes as you get further on in the 3 chapters. I would like to mention, though, either those 3 stories, they all feature the same service of naval aircraft, and there's some reoccurring characters. So it does have, even though there's 3 stories, there's a lot of interlinking among them.
It's the 3 guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it tracks these 3 guys, and it's a wonderfully devastating Ennis war comic. Gonna stick the knife in and twist it till you cry type of Ennis book. So,
but not too graphically bloody. I mean, he really, I guess maybe it's published by the Navy or whatever, but it wasn't what you'd call, the death is romantic. It's not really graphically gruesome or anything like that, which is fine.
Yeah, he must have. He's got to be gearing it toward that association's membership is probably almost entirely over the age of 60 at least. So he must have been gearing it toward that.
Well, yeah, but you know what? They didn't hurt it.
No,
it was a really respectful, probably, like when you read Garth Ennis war stories, there's this underlying deep respect he has, not just for the people that perform these tasks or his romanticized version of them, but the time and the place and the section of history that the story occupies. He's got such an intense respect for everything that just oozes out on every page and all the characters. He's a very romantic war writer, but he's very realistic, let's put it that way.
Yes, he grounds it all very much in he's not he never lets his sort of the nostalgia aspect get in the way of just sort of the history and nostalgia have a great balance in Ennis.
Yes, it doesn't. Yeah, the nostalgia doesn't hurt the history. It doesn't dull it.
Exactly.
And the history itself stays interesting despite the numerous amount of facts he crams into the thing about this whole situation. But we should mention P.J. Holden as artist, who does an absolutely wonderful job, very clean style. And these guys are in very nicely, meticulously detailed warships and airplanes. And Stringbags is about 3 pilots that fly outdated aircraft for the English Navy and get probably all the shit jobs because of it. And it's just a great book on war and what the sacrifices are. And you've heard it all about war, but Garth Ennis just keeps making it fresh. It's hard to turn it down. So look for the Stringbags, an unusually titled, but you'll find out why when you read it, book. That's a real solid one. Get it through your library if nowhere else, my friends.
Well, now COVID, so you probably can't get it through your library. So at the very least,
damn, I forgot about that. Sorry.
Yeah, there is an ebook version of it. So,
oh God, if you're predisposed towards that, definitely read it. It's a good read. Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking of good reads, you ran into something by Craig Thompson, his newest, didn't you?
I ran into it by way of, I got this unexpected package in the mail full of goodies from Vernon, which happens occasionally and is quite awesome.
I curate this packages very nicely.
Yes, and I never know what's coming because he never tells me, so it shows up. And I was like, oh, it's from Vernon, and what was it this time? And so, Ginseng Roots, Craig Thompson. I've only read the first 2. There are 3 so far, so Vernon can't spoil the second half for me, but or you. But yeah, it's a really good. So it's a nonfiction exploration of the Wisconsin ginseng growing that has been going on since the 1970s at least,
right?
Possibly even earlier. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but because who would have an idea of this?
Yeah, Thompson and his family lived in rural Wisconsin during the day, and they ended up working on ginseng farms as a result of it when they were growing up. And it's really a fascinating thing. He blends in his family and their developments along with the progress of this produce thing, and how it shapes America and thinking for a while. And it's just pretty, because the ginseng, I grew up then. I don't remember ginseng root being that popular, but I didn't patronize grocery stores at that age of my life either.
Well, at that point, they were exporting all of it to China. So, I mean, this...
okay, that explains it.
One of the super interesting things is that, ginseng for China was grown in the United States, and then in Wisconsin specifically, and then shipped overseas. And he goes into that in the first issue. So you get this. The first issue is really a nice mix of the history, and I made a comment in my post about the first issue. It was like, yeah, the Wisconsin ginseng growers should probably have hired him to do their marketing, because he does a wonderful job of it. Just, it's a fantastic job of introducing this weird bit of, I mean, sort of economic reality.
Agricultural development too, yeah.
Yes, the agricultural industry thing, they really should get on board with him doing something for him, because he's just great at how he does the nonfiction sort of educational comic too.
Yeah, blending in his family storyline along with a history of the ginseng root and it's how it found its way to America and what it does in this country, this area he lives in. And I mean, he really keeps it moving, despite the fact that you could easily, I think, get very bored reading a comic about ginseng unless it was done by Craig Thompson. It's very fascinating and lovingly, like I say, lovingly drawn. It's very much like a fantasy storybook with lots of details. It's really pretty.
Yeah, and so I've only gotten to the second issue, and as of issue 2, I mean, issue 1 I was on board because it's good and I'm going to trust Vernon, but issue 2 is where I was just like, oh, so this is going to be great. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. All 3 of them can be read individually, so if you find one of them somewhere, just pick it up. But yeah, the improvement over 2 versus 1, it's almost like, again, we've talked about Craig Thompson, and I think a lot of melancholy and unassuredness it pervades his work sometimes, maybe sometimes to his own detriment, because he's a really wonderful talent and his work is always worth reading. But he manages to overcome this with the ginseng root book, and I just like reading. It was a real nice read. It's very intimate too. It's like a indie. I think you mentioned it. It's on brown paper and has red and black ink, and it's just.
Oh yeah, it's a gorgeous little package too, because I don't think this is available digitally, correct?
I couldn't tell you. I was happened to be at a local Chicago area comic store. I'm like, wow, Craig Thompson did something new, and it was that excitement of finding something new on the comic rack. I bought the first one, and then the next time I went over there with a friend, I picked up the next 2 while I was there.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything about it being available digitally from Drawn and Quarterly or anyone else. So yeah, and I mean, that's the other thing about the book is it's very much sort of loving the comic book format, yet it's also a very indie book, because he and his brother grew up in the 80s and they grew up on Marvel and even Star Comics, which is kind of hilarious because it's just right there, even though he's a little bit older than I am.
Right when Jim Shooter was running Marvel, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, the golden age, right? Are we to get a Secret Wars issue? But he does these wonderful, like, sort of cartoonist renditions of the covers of old books. It's a lovely package here. I know that in 2020, it's hard to commit to floppies when either it's going to be out digitally or it's going to come out in a collection someday. But whatever they do for the collection, you can tell is going to be a little bit different than what you get from these floppies. So definitely try to track down these floppies. They're also available at the publisher, which is Uncivilized Books, and they even have a subscription program. So uncivilizedbooks.com. I might have to look into the subscription here.
But yeah, even if you find one, just pick it up anyway and patronize the comic retailer that took a chance on Craig's work. And make sure it sells. Yes, that's a say. Yes. Clean those copies off the racks.
Yes.
You heard it here first.
Oh, it looks like they raised the price. What? There you go.
I'll finish up. What is it? What do you got here? You got your new reads coming up. Let me make. I think I mentioned to you a couple weeks back. I picked up a package of this old Enigma comic from Vertigo. It was 8 issues by Peter Milligan and Duncan Fegredo, and I got all warm and fuzzy about the thing because, well, Vertigo, as you know, doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form anymore and hasn't for at least 10 years now. But back in the day, I think it's 93 or something, I think this thing came out with. It was a couple of years before I opened up the shop, for Christ's sakes. And I just said, it succeed, but it didn't utterly fail because it kept Peter Milligan writing, and it kept Duncan Fegredo drawing, and they have this silly tale that goes over 8 issues about a guy who's coming to grips with a lot of things in his life, and he manifests himself in a whole surreal universe with a superhero called the Enigma. And it's got its sexual things, all the right recipe elements for a Vertigo comic of the 90s. I wouldn't say it's anything special, but if you happen to see him, I'd read him if Peter Milligan turns you on once in a while. And Duncan Fegredo, this is early work by him, so it's really a pleasure to look at. And you think of what he turned into later doing Hellboy, and you just like, oh, here he is at the beginning. So yeah, worth a look.
Okay. Yeah. When he sent me that, I was like, yeah, Enigma. I know I have that because at one point when I got back into comics, I just bought all the Vertigo 90s limiteds I could find because I thought that would be a good sort of. I mean, there was a good level of quality to Vertigo in the 90s. Yeah, it never dipped below.
Vertigo
point,
comics was always readable.
So yeah, that was, and I don't know that I ever got to that one. I might have, but
Peter Milligan's always been an interesting
it.
writer. Like I say, half his stuff I really enjoyed. Sometimes the other half infuriates me, but I don't mind. I mean, a writer's got to write, so the DC's buying what you're paying for, so be it. And I found Enigma kind of right in the middle there. It was something I only had 8 issues with, and I was fine with it.
Okay.
So what have you been reading? I see you got Ed Brubaker did a new book, for crying out loud.
Okay, so Ed Brubaker.
I think I sent it to you.
I paid him enough that I could send it to you. No, I sent it
right
because it's only digital.
A retailer copy. I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
Well, I remember doing
this.
Oh, did you? Okay. Well, I remember sending it to you just because it was Ed Brubaker and what's his name, Marcos Martin.
Well, wonderful. They've got a retailer copy to you, and then I emailed you a copy after paying them I think I paid them like $9 for this. Now that I say that, I hope nobody looks it up because Ed Brubaker's not going to be too happy with me if he listened to this.
We love
because Friday is we love Ed Brubaker. Ed Brubaker's work is unfortunately iffy.
But, what is Ed Brubaker now? He's got to be well into his 40s.
Not all of it,
doesn't he? Maybe 50.
He's got to be. I think he's got to be 50. Anyway, Ed Brubaker. Go back and listen to old episodes of Comics Fun. We some great episodes on Ed Brubaker. But
remember when he made one of the writers of the year?
During the recording of that.
I had an orgasm.
Oh, yeah, and then the next thing he did was crap. Yeah, I remember that.
So anyway, Friday.
But yes, Friday. So it's him and Marcos Martin, and they don't say any. I didn't read any description of this, so I suppose if I had, I would have realized it was a first issue, but it doesn't, say number 1 on it anywhere, which is kind of some bullshit. I'm just gonna say, and so what it is the female sidekick of a male teen detective. And I'm pretty sure all male teen detectives had female sidekicks of some sort, like Encyclopedia Brown or Nate the Great at some point. And he even mentioned some other ones. But basically, it's about this girl who has gone off to college after spending her life being overshadowed by this dude. And she comes back home for Christmas and they go on a case together and they never talk about something that happened to them the night before she left college, which, it could have been romantic overtones, or it could have been, they found out that his dad killed his mom or something. It's not discussed. You have to come back for the next issue for that. It's set in not Pacific Northwest. It's set in New England. So it's very it's going to be Lovecraftian, and I mean it's fine, but it's 2020, and we are reading about a female detective overshadowed by the dude, and this was stale as of what 1937 when the first Nancy Drew book came
That's
out.
pretty
Like,
rough.
we get that it's a trope. It's a trope, yes, but it's not one that needs to be investigated. It's one that needs to be
left behind in the history of Nancy Drew.
Changed. Yeah, it needs to be left behind. Like, so it's very, and then, you know, Marcos Martin, I've always liked him a little more than you have. And this is not his, he's not a rural New England mystery.
No, he's like
artist.
fantastic in action and stuff like
Let's just
that. Yeah.
put it like that. So, I mean, it's fine. I'll keep reading it. I will resentfully mention issue numbers if they start using them in my posts. But it is a far cry from what, I mean, not just what I was hoping for, but what Ed Brubaker's return to comics in any form should be right now.
He seems to be off the mark a bit for me. When I was reading some of his, I'll say later criminal stuff, that he was kind of losing his place. I don't know whether it was an intensity or whatever.
Yes, and there was that criminal graphic novel that they hid was a criminal graphic novel, and you're just like,
I felt mad that
what the hell are you doing?
Well,
like, just say it's a criminal book. Like, that's what we're buying, dude. Like, so yeah, we're going to talk about Brubaker again in a second, so I'll wait on that. But yeah, so Friday, you can give them $1, or I think you can give them a penny and get this book. Don't give them a penny if you're interested in it. Give them more than a penny. Yeah, give them at least a couple bucks. But yeah, you know, if you're interested, check it out. But don't be. If you're interested, check it out. But otherwise, you know, wait on it. I mean, it could get good, and I will let you know. But otherwise, just wait that out for now. And then I'm realizing what we're going to do next episode, Vernon, is we're going to talk about our joint books first. And then we're going to talk about our split books later, because we have a joint book coming up here. But next thing I wanted to just mention, shout out to Casey Nowak, who all of their work is published as Carolyn Nowak, but they're not Carolyn anymore. So they have a Patreon where they shared some of their like floppies, but in PDF form. Also did a book called Girl Town, which you read. I got you to read Girl Town. Yeah. So just good, you know, done in one indie book.
Now, is it YA or is it older audience?
Definitely created a watch. It is not. It is older. You remember how Girl Town was maybe about teenagers at some times, but never sort of too much sex to be YA, and too much consternation about it to be YA.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, and So I mean, good creator. They're working on some new stuff. It's going to be cool, I'm sure, when it comes along, but certainly something to check out. And the other reason I wanted to mention it was there are a lot of creators on Patreon right now who, you know, need money if you got it, and they're making things available. So definitely check out your favorite creators' Patreons. Like, who's got a Patreon? Especially now. Who needs a Patreon now? You're not going to believe this. Crap. Who drew Omega the Unknown?
Oh, the guy with the unusual name.
The indie series.
Farrell Dalrymple.
Farrell Dalrymple
or something, yeah.
Farrell Dalrymple has a Patreon. Yeah, he's got a Patreon set up now. So, I mean, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and you get, you know, for $1 or $3 a month, you know, that would be worth it if I got all of Chris Samney's commissions in one place instead of having to wait for him to post them. But he doesn't have one set up. But it's like, you get cool stuff, and it's worth supporting him even a little bit. And so now this next one, Vernon actually turned me on to, which is hilarious because of my day job, I have been reading or I've had a lot more availability to sort of YA graphic novels, and so I've been checking those out a lot. And so Vernon read Nimona
Thank you for the
by
name.
Noelle Stevenson, and then told me, yes, and then told me to check it out. And this is just a fantastic book, despite being misprinted by Harper Teen, which hopefully will get corrected because both Vernon and I's copies had the same issues. But yeah, it was a web comic that she did as a sort of, I guess, a thesis project in college, and it went on to be nominated for the National Book Award and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, just a great sort of weird comic strip influenced fantasy, sci-fi,
adventure,
comedy,
super adventure,
drama. Like, yeah, I mean, it's
funny,
depressing, it's inspiring.
And the lead character
it's
is not
just
anybody
wonderful
that,
stuff.
I mean, she's sympathetic, but you wouldn't want to be in her shoes.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's got a YA on it, but I don't necessarily think that when she was creating this and publishing it online, her target audience was a YA audience. I think she was more geared towards
it's too
her own
sophisticated
age group
to be a grade school
at
thing.
the time.
Although there's really not much in there that would qualify as controversial material enough that you couldn't let your 8th grader read it. I don't think. Death, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, it's so good, in fact, that I want to watch her Sheena, or not Sheena, She-Ra
one of the
show.
creative people on that?
She is the
one
creative person on that. Yeah.
Fuck me. All right.
Good, yeah. Good. So
let me write that down.
Yeah, I know.
You know, when I had my shop, I used to keep the whole front end of the store was open for younger people. We had a YA rack there. And I just remembered going through so many copies of Nimona, and I never had the opportunity to read it. And then for whatever reason, 2 years later, it pops into my head for some reason. So I go through the local library and I get a copy of it. And I go, wow, this is so fast-paced and sophisticated and fresh. And when you say that phrase, all art is about art, there's nothing particularly new about Nimona. It's just the way all the pieces are assembled so cleverly, and the characters are conceived of and executed in a way that makes them fun and exciting. And I was always on my edge as to what was going to happen in the strip, because like you said, there's tragedy, so you're not quite sure if it's going to have a happy ending or not, you know. But easily one of the best YA books I've ever seen, and I'm 58 and I enjoyed it. So there, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, sort of the reason I started getting more into the YA was just because when we were reading, when I was still living and going to Vernon's shop, if there was YA, it was really bad. Like, it was, you know, publishers trying to do comics and not doing them well. But this current sort of generation of comic creator who can toggle between sort of YA graphic novels and monthly floppies, they know what they're doing. So we've reached a new area of professionalism, which, you know, it's like regular comics sort of hit that, I want to say, when did Vertigo get bland but not incompetent? Like 2008.
I don't know. When did they
10,
when did they
you
move
know,
it out
like
to the West
when it
Coast?
just was like,
yeah, before
yeah,
that
it was before that though.
They didn't know
there were some Vertigo series that, but yeah. So, you know, we've hit a nice period of these sort of geared toward teenage readers in a different way than all comic books.
Well, you know, and it's general sophistication of the product too. I mean, I can't imagine Nimona existing at a time when I was growing up in the mid '60s. You know, But I can't say that I wasn't sophisticated because we used to get Mad trade paperbacks and other stuff, and I was reading National Lampoon when I was in
Yeah,
grade
I
school.
think
So
that
it all depended on your source of material, but Nimona is just something unusual, and it shows, you're right, the professional level. I'd like to see publishers take the lead and find gems like Noelle Stevenson, or for that matter, keep Craig Thompson published no matter what. You know what I mean? We don't have to wait 3 to 5 years in between books for this guy. A
yeah.
real visionary. I guess we found ourselves another job to aspire to, in other words.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, you've got what was that? This isn't on the list, and we're on a
Yeah,
tangent. But
exactly.
hey, we're still in the comics section, so you want to hear this? So there was this. Is it Shadow of the Batgirl? Was that the YA Batgirl novel, which I guess is
Is that the one
selling
by Stephen
well?
Pugh or Pug or whatever his name is?
No,
Oh,
this
that's
is
Harley Quinn, maybe.
which
Maybe
is
that's
that
Harley.
one that I read? Okay, that's the Harley Quinn one's a much better example. Yes. So this Harley Quinn graphic novel by Steve Pugh,
Oh yeah,
written
she's
by
a
Mariko
author.
Tamaka.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, and so she's done like straight YA that I read. And she did a Supergirl series that I don't know if we both read, but it
Did she touch upon Ms.
wasn't as
Marvel? Maybe I'm trying
great
to
as
remember.
it
Yeah.
should have been. Maybe, but yeah, so she wrote a straight YA graphic novel called Laura Dern Keeps Breaking Up with Me, and that was good. And I was just like confused by these YA graphic novels because they don't have chapter breaks, and I'm like, what do you want somebody to sit and read 192 pages straight? Like, nobody asks you to do that in comics. What's up with this? So I don't know if the pacing just got better, but Harley Quinn Breaking Glass is really good, and I think it's selling well. So it's almost like DC, for all their problems, which are endless. They're endless problems, but I think they're like selling really well. So we're gonna have this nice sort of, I don't know, sort of resurgence of popular characters in good projects, which is what DC used to do in, I think, the late 80s, when they started having to put out miniseries to sort of satiate their pre-crisis readers with post-crisis renditions of characters. But it's nice to see them get back to that, unintentionally, of course, because is anybody at DC now? Were they there in the 80s? I think, not even Paul Levitz is
No, everybody's
officer
gone
of the
now,
company
yeah.
anymore.
When they went to
so,
the West Coast, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, everything will figure itself out, and the YA market. Not to mention, like, quick reads or something like that. I would pick that Harley Quinn up just traveling to grab that and read it or something. Like I say, it's a totally different attitude of looking at comics, but we're going to have to try as many options as possible as we climb our way out of this situation economically. That's how it is.
Yeah. And you know what? 200 pages of Steve Pugh art. We have not had 200 pages of Steve Pugh art in quite a long time.
Yay, Steve. We love you, man.
Yeah. Okay. So now then I did some rereads.
Since I don't do rereads, I'll just comment loosely when you're.
And we'll. Yes. Okay. So I reread DC New Frontier. I finally read my absolute edition that I purchased from you. Yep. Took me that long to read it. Someday I'm going to read Lost Girls too. But yeah, so DC New Frontier, Darwin Cook's comic of the Silver Age of DC Comics. I mean, it's a really great book, and I read it in one sitting. I made sure to give myself enough time to do that. And, the problem is that there's like very little reason to read shitty old
you mean
comics.
like that
If
Hawkman
you've
one I
got this
sent
great
you?
one, it's just like, I haven't read that yet. And Hawkman's not actually in New Frontier, I don't think. So no, not Hawkman, but, probably some late 50s DC war comics or something you don't need to read because you got this. But I mean, it's New Frontier holds up.
Glad to hear that,
New
because it was
Frontier
always a
holds up
nice
just
breezy
fine.
read for me. Something you could recommend to a lot of people who were kind of lay people in comics that didn't really know much about it, and they'd ask questions, but they weren't the kind of questions you couldn't answer easily.
Right. It's like Marvels if Marvels were accessible.
Yeah, accessibility is big. They're going to learn this.
Sadly, the only collection of New Frontier that does not have the incredibly bad Dan Didio edited special from when they did the TV show or the direct-to-video movie, the animated movie that's god awful. The special's just awful, and I can't remember if I read it. I think I had it. I think it might even be in a box somewhere.
But they're keeping it. You could skip that part. Just chop it
bad.
off. Yeah, rip those pages out of your DC Absolute editions.
Yeah, rip those pages out. Yeah. But yeah, so I read that, and then I read Sleeper season 1. Some Brubaker, some classic Brubaker Phillips, the classic Brubaker Phillips, and had to remind myself that it was big news for exactly 2 days when Tom Cruise was supposedly going to turn Sleeper into a movie, and then that didn't happen. So hopefully Ed Brubaker got, $5,000 for that option or whatever, and they got to buy themselves something. But
Sleeper, yeah, it was an interesting transitional type of superhero title, wasn't it? I mean, Ed Brubaker was breaking his chops over at the DC at that time.
Yeah, it's Wildstorm. So he's dealing with Jim Lee characters from one of the Jim Lee series or somebody's Wildstorm series. It's really got some good stuff in it. It's got some slow parts. It's got some parts that don't age particularly well. The whole, I feel like the hard-boiled genre sort of drowned itself in the late aughts, and Sleeper was sort of on the front end of that. But it sort of it never broke out because the sort of constraints of the genre became way too clear with way too many people hitting on it. And so, yeah, I mean, I haven't read season 2 yet. I'm looking forward to that. But, I remember when we read Sleeper season 1, it was all in the floppies and it was month to month. You were just on the edge of your seat because you were waiting to find out what happens to the protagonist. And you had not seen Sean Phillips do this kind of, serial work. I don't think And so, I mean, at this point, Brubaker was still mostly known for Gotham Central and some Batman writing, but I mean, he was a Vertigo guy. He had done, Scene of the Crime was still, a defining. People were still bothering him to do a Scene of the Crime.
Yeah, he did that
sequel
one post-apocalyptic Vertigo book too. I can't remember. Yeah.
Yes, Dead Enders with Philip Bond. Yeah. So I mean, that had a lot of cool ideas. So yeah, I mean, it was a good book, but you can see the greatness that he would achieve at some point in Sleeper, but he was not there yet. But it's worth the read. Now let's talk about something real quick that is not worth the read, and actually, this is just because I need
Garth
to
Ennis
shame
never said
you,
everything he ever wrote was art.
I asked you before I started reading Barracuda to tell me what you thought of the format of the post.
The format.
Because Barracuda, I read the fly, because I've been doing an Ennis Punisher Max reread. And it's been going well. There's been some great stuff in there, like I knew there was, right? But the giving Punisher Max the same amount of attention that I gave Love and Rockets was not.
Well, that's a difference between commercial comics and art. Well, here's the thing.
Right.
So, Barracuda was one of those side mini-series, much like Highlander Laddie or something that he would do for the boys. It was
exactly. And this was the only one he did for Punisher.
He did Punisher one-offs too.
He did Punisher one-offs, but this was the only time he spun a character off.
It's almost like if you had a seat of FX or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, more like Cinemax original programming. But yeah, so basically, everybody, go read my Punisher Presents Barracuda single post of this 4-issue limited series, and tell me what you think of doing posts like that, as Vernon should have. Before the pandemic, March 13th, I wrote this, and I'm still waiting for Vernon to tell me what he thinks of this format going forward. For sort of commercial
the Barracuda, that was probably best read as a choppy floppy, and inserting it into the Essential Punisher seems kind of mean-spirited because it's not about Frank at all. Right.
No, he's not in it. I mean, it's,
if you like, I would say if you like, there's got to be a volume of Essential Punisher that says, okay, if you loved the Garth Ennis Punisher, you'll like these, or something like that. But I don't know. It fulfilled a need, and I think is it Goran Parlov's artwork got me through. That's who it was. The guy's always minimally decent. And his women are pretty, and it's probably a Marvel Knights series designed to suck in your money from guys like me. So I'm sorry I falsely led you down the wrong path.
You didn't lead me down a wrong path. It was in my Punisher omnibus, so I was going to read it, but just the formatting of it. Of my post is what we want Vernon to check out, because you notice he still hasn't said that he's read it.
Most of the stuff I do.
But I mean, this was at the start it was March 13th. It was the start of the pandemic. You were busy. So
there you
go. Okay. So at that point, we will stop talking about comics now, and you are more than welcome to skip out on us if you don't want to hear about movies and TV coming up.
Because of that. Yeah. I mean,
you're going to miss news. There's going to be relevant news to this week coming up in, well, I don't know if it's going to be relevant, but it's going to be news. But yeah, so possibly relevant. We'll find out. So that's going to be coming back in about 30 seconds. And hopefully your Preparation H commercial will be quite informative. Do your bowels burn? That's too bad, because this is not a commercial. I forgot to tell you the link to the Old Comics Fondle podcast very neatly that I managed to set up while we were recording the first half of the episode. Just go to CFP, Comics Fondle Podcast, cfp.thestopbutton.com, and that will redirect you to the Comics Fondle podcast episodes. Hopefully that'll be nicer in the near future, but for right now, you don't want to mess with WordPress.com domain hosting DNS forwarding, because it looks like it sucks. Exactly. So now we will have the commercial, which presumably will not be about burning shits, but you never know.
But my balls were burning.
There you go. All right. Commercial. So welcome back to the second half of the show. There will be no more commercial breaks. One thing that I want you to think about, Vernon, while we record this, and we'll talk about it again at the outro. Do we want to do 2 episodes? Do we
Maybe.
want to do a comics episode followed by a media or visual or whatever AV episode that would then come out like either the same day or the next day? So something to think about, something for
Yeah, next
listeners to
time.
think about too.
Right.
But that's, but we did have a lot of comics to get through because we have not done one of these in a year, and we only actually covered comics we've been reading for the last
I was going to
probably
say not a
month.
single new one either. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So we'll see what happens. But that's
I'm
on the
game.
table, and
Yeah.
there will be places you can comment and let us know, and so on. But think about that, reader. Or listener. Think about that, Vernon.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we are in the news section, which we've never done before.
Well, I just happen to see why. Why haven't we done news?
Why haven't we done news? I don't know. Why haven't we ever done news?
We've done news. We've
done news, but we've never had 4 headlines that we're gonna shoot through right now.
All right. Well, what is this? Ruby Rose is quitting Batman woman. What is the matter with that woman?
What's the matter is that it was a quote unquote mutual decision. Apparently, shooting a TV show, dealing with toxic DC fandom, hurting her back in stunts, movie star, B minus C plus list, but movie star no less. Ruby Rose quit Batwoman yesterday, with much less fanfare than Michael Keaton quit Batman.
Yeah, I'll imagine. Yeah.
93, he had a press conference, and unfortunately, she did not quit because they're putting Batwoman in ice skates like they did to make Val Kilmer quit.
Okay.
Today, the news came out that she hated working on TV. She hated the long hours. She hated living in Vancouver. And that led to
I can see the Vancouver part.
Yeah. She didn't get along as well as with co-stars and so on, though. Did you ever watch any episodes?
No. I saw her on some other show, but I can't remember which one it was. Right.
I would say besides her, the only worthwhile co-star is, I believe her name's Nicole Kang. I'm going to look her up real quick because she's so good. Yes, Nicole Kang.
The bad thing about this show is it came right during the big burnout for me on DC shows, so I really didn't jump in on it or anything.
Right. You're downward sloping on Flash and Supergirl, and then it's like Batwoman has like a teeny bit of a bump because there's also
it's a lesbian Batwoman. What you talking about, boy? Chicken.
Rachel Scarston. No, yes, is that who it is? I think that's who it is. The villain is like great, but Dougray Scott is not good, and Megan Tandy is terrible, and so.
Well, I imagine they just work off the comic book, right?
I don't know. I never got to the comic book. Anyway, so that's some news. But today it came out that I just said that it was a mutual decision, and so that presumably means they have somebody in mind for a Batwoman, and they're going to try and get them. But now they wanted to cast an out lesbian actress. They ended up with a queer actress who fans did not think was lesbian enough. And then also her not being actually Jewish was a problem for some fans.
What is she, like, very Jewish? What's the problem?
Batwoman's Jewish. They wanted a Jewish Batwoman. So it's like Ruby Rose got it on both sides. She got it from the people who didn't think she was a progressive enough cast, and also then the DC fanboys who, hate. Well, I mean, they hate women is actually what it is.
Like, it's just so weird. It's been so long since I've seen a Batwoman story. I can't even remember she was Jewish, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I think it actually might have been pertinent at some point. Like, it was like a big deal at the time, I feel like, which is great.
Related to Bruce? Isn't she related to Bruce Wayne?
Yeah, but it's, on the whatever. I'm sure it makes sense.
Yeah, okay, cousins,
but,
whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so, Batwoman being Jewish was a big deal in 2006. Think about that. Think about how great that is, that it was a big deal that you had a lead comic book character who was Jewish in 2006. That was 14 years ago.
Well, what you gonna do? Well, good luck to
not the
band.
most progressive fan industry.
Not really.
Okay. Now, other thing is the Last Days of American Crime.
Yeah. As the commercial
the trailer
said,
came out.
It said what the top something graphic novel. I thought that was kind of cute because I don't remember that at the time. But
it wasn't. Who published that?
Well, it was on the commercial, the little trailer front.
From Netflix. It's a Netflix movie.
Yeah, and I was like, I remember that.
Okay, so this came out 11 years ago, 2009, and it came out from Radical.
Well, Greg Butini couldn't finish it either. It took a while, I think.
Yeah, and so it came out, looks like, I'm looking at the old posts. First issue dated December 2009. There were 3. Second issue dated August 2020. Okay. And apparently Tuccini's art falls apart, so that's bad.
Right.
And then
he was through it.
Yeah, I'm paging through my post here, and apparently here's a quote. On the plus, Remender is left awful. He's still writing a movie pitch for Mickey Rourke, but unfortunately, the movie does not have Mickey Rourke. So I have no interest in the movie. Vernon, you said you thought it looked at least not bad. Unwatchable.
Yeah, unwatchable. That was my thing. Like, you really must, go ahead. I know the trailer didn't really make it look any different from 100 other, streaming network made for movies, as it were.
Yeah.
But the story was fine. Remender, you and I go up and down with Rick Remender. And
you go up and down with Rick Remender. I am always on the bottom of the ocean with Rick Remender.
Yeah. Well, I think of him as an ideas guy. He doesn't do well on execution, but he always got like 1,000,001 ideas to pull out of his butt. And he gets me through the Last Days of American Crime. I don't know. It could translate into a decent TV movie, but I don't know.
Okay.
I still like the bit. Top selling or greatest or top number one.
Hold on. Let's see what this was. Hold on. Let me.
Yeah,
I got the computer on mute.
I made you too curious. Yeah, it's a blurb. I think you can actually read it. It might even be on the still that advertises the thing on the initial link. I don't know, but it's so unusual. Hey, you know what? I'm glad they sold it. I'm glad it was made. Let's put a check in Rick Remender's wallet. We're good with that. I can live with that. I'll play the moderates here, I'm not seeing it. I'll have to point it out to you later. I know I saw it. That's where I saw it.
Oh, I'm gonna grab this real quick, and we will talk about not the next news item, but the one after that, because it'll be faster.
Sure.
So when Disney Plus launched last year, before everybody knew all that they were going to do was give a shit about Baby Yoda and whatever TV movies Disney made in the 90s that they wanted to rewatch or whatever's going on with that. The Simpsons are on Disney Plus, and people noticed that they were using the 16:9 sort of cropped versions that they made for HD, as opposed to the original aspect ratio ones that play in the UK. I just read a headline before we started recording. The original Simpsons are on Disney Plus now. So if you were waiting to rewatch 20 years of The Simpsons...
Yeah, I was waiting for that one.
You can now watch it in the original aspect ratio. That's looking like it's happening on May 28th.
Now, for us Luddites, what's the difference in shape? Is it significant or what?
I mean, it's square TV. It's the difference in aspect ratio between, say, your iPad and your HD TV.
Yeah, because
if you look at the examples, they do cut off jokes because it's a bunch of sight gags, and they cut those off.
Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about the old box version of television or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Yes. This is another bonus to the new podcast. Everyone, Vernon gets to to hear me talk about movies for the first time in, oh
Yeah.
God, has it been
Well,
15? It's been a while. But
with the
let's not dwell because we're going to get sad if we talk about that. So let's
no. Well,
yeah.
that's again. This is another extension of what we were talking about earlier with the coronavirus thing. Movies, theaters, it's all going to be changed. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I granted I'm not in the modern demographic. I get that. I'm a mature individual. There's probably one out of every 50 films that I'll want to see. But I found stuff. You know what I mean? I found a reason. My wife and I would find a reason.
You went to the movies more in the last
Yeah.
4 to 5 years than I did.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I
you
think
got
so.
you were going every week.
It was our
Yeah.
Monday thing, you know. If we
Yeah.
saw something we both wanted to see, you know, we saw some good stuff like Jojo Rabbit and Mister Rogers and all that. But you know, again, with the streaming services, I just sit at home and watch movies now. It's pretty sad. I mean, but with
Yeah.
the coronavirus, you don't have a choice anyway. There, you can't. You know, you want to go to the movie theaters now? You know, not until there's a cure. You know, I don't care what anybody says. I don't want to go sit in the theater with somebody else.
Okay. So I have the last days of America. I agree with you. I do not have but I haven't had any interest in going to the theaters in a long time.
Yeah.
The only things I've seen in the theater.
Well, I want to wait before I interrupt you one more time.
Yeah.
Isn't there like a pitch for these content farms like Disney and what are some of the other ones? You know, to buy movie theaters, have a chain, and just run your own content in them.
You can't do that. That's against the laws, Vernon.
Well, yeah,
That's what the
I
studios
realize that.
did.
Now that you think about it, that was
Yeah.
instituted early at the beginning of the century
Yeah.
too, if I remember correctly.
1948, I think. Yeah.
Right, but here we go. Here's the thing: we're gonna have to find out how many movie theaters make it after all this. You know.
Well, and that's the thing is that talking about movie theaters, it's like they have been bleeding their customer. I mean, because it's, a big space.
Yes.
They, they pay everybody
expensive.
shit, but they have even a small theater probably has a staff of 20.
Yeah.
And there are no small theaters anymore. So you're looking at a staff of like 40. And they pay them shit. And then they charge us a fortune on concessions.
Right. That's the only place they make.
And that's where they make their money. Right. And it's been like that since, the 70s?
Yeah.
So it's like, this is not a good industry. It's
the
like
business model is all wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Business, that'll show you what I know. The business model is shit. And so they need to fix it. And either they're going to fix it or people are going to pay and watch first run movies at home. But
that's what they're talking about, the at-home experience. The coronavirus, it takes a lot of people who've never done it before, but now they're forced to do it. They're forced to order things online. They're forced to watch television at home and movies. But once they discover that they may like it, it hurts. You know what I mean? It hurts the original business because they have to figure out something else to drag them into the theaters. You know what I mean?
And when you think about it, I was actually thinking about this the other day. How people are like, well, you see a movie in the theater because that's how it's meant to be seen.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, well, here's the thing, though. That's not how the director saw it. That's not how the cameraman saw it. You're buying into this idea that there's something to be gained in the composition that no one had any experience of at the time.
Right. I think most of the times the director just sees it in front of their own eyes like a spectacle unfolding. There's some films notwithstanding, like 1917 or whatever, that's all they're about is visual experiencing.
Yeah.
But
so it's
go ahead, please.
Just the panel composition. It is much more like a comic book. You do not, just the framing of things. And actually by watching a film on a iPad or on a phone even, maybe not a phone because you're going to lose too much detail in the,
I can never imagine watching TV or movies on a phone.
But like watching it on an iPad, and I noticed this on laptops, you are seeing the whole frame at once, and there's no distraction from the full image. So you are getting that full image, because otherwise the only place to sit in a movie theater is center middle,
where the sound is and everything.
Halfway back, right?
Yeah.
And like you got the full frame, you got the sound right, and it's like we're getting that experience. We're getting that same experience, but on these devices with immediate access. And also, I don't like David Lean, but we won't get into it now. But because we're still not out of the news section, Vernon. We got to get to the actual huge freaking news of the day.
Oh my
May
God.
20th, 2020. Warner Brothers is going to give Zack Snyder $20 to $30 million for special effects to finish Justice League. It will be coming before the end of the year to their new streaming service, HBO Max.
So it's going to be like Justice League 2, right? The sequel? Or?
Nope. It is Justice League without the Joss Whedon shit.
Oh my.
Now, have you seen this terrible movie?
I have heard so much about it that I decided that it was best not to, because I spent too much time watching Batman versus Superman. Never have to go through that again.
You watched the long one on that too.
I did.
You can't watch the long one. The first 2 hours is like adequate, and then it goes to shit for the last one. So
yes.
In the original version, it's only like 90 minutes of stuff that's not actually that good, because they cut out all of the reporter stuff and just anyway. So this is the news. The news dropped before we started recording the second half, and it was actually in the agenda because somebody retweeted the joke about Warner Brothers getting Joss Whedon to do a director's cut, and sort of troll. It was a fake post. It was a troll post.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, yeah.
But since then, they have they apparently negotiated something, and we don't talk about. Well, we haven't talked about this at all. The only place you can possibly read this news I'm going to recommend to you is actually Bleeding Cool, which is not a site that you need to read often, because, hey, we know for a fact that Rich Johnson sucks. But the guy who writes the news on... Yeah, the guy who writes... Yeah, well, I wonder how much Avatar is putting... Anyway, the guy who writes this is Judd Terr, who is like a ironic Rich Johnson. This is just an excerpt from this guy's post. The news was announced to coincide with a Man of Steel watch-along led by Snyder himself, with the news release sent out moments after Superman makes out with Lois Lane in the wreckage of Metropolis after brutally snapping Zod's neck.
I can't wait.
So well, who's really not going to be able to wait is Monique, my wife, because guess what, y'all? This means you get the uncut Henry Cavill without the fucked up face.
What do you mean? He's got his mustache and his beard or whatever?
You've never seen it. That's right. You don't know.
No.
The CGI on him is god awful.
I heard that. Yeah,
it's absurd. Yeah. But no, so this will be all the stuff he shot before they did the reshoots, which means we will actually get to see what appeared to be a wonderful scene between him and Lois Lane in the cornfield, where he was shirtless. So my wife will enjoy that. But this is like a whole new bonus. I don't even know.
Wait,
I got her a baby Yoda yesterday, and I don't think that's going to compare to
shirtless.
New shirtless Henry Cavill a year before Witcher season 2. Like, this is like the best gift. Anyway, So yeah, HBO Max is gonna make Justice League, and let me see real quick if there's a date anywhere, and then we will move on without a commercial because there are no commercials in the second half.
Oh, so it's gonna be on a streaming service then.
It's gonna be on It's gonna be on the Warner Brothers streaming service, which is stupidly called HBO Max, and let's see.
That's weird.
All right, hold on.
So services, you can't even keep up with them.
This one hasn't even launched. Yeah. So 20 to 30 million. The release date is
20 to 30 million what?
Dollars for the special effects.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah. Currently,
they're going to throw more money in this steaming turd.
Darkseid will be in it.
Thank God.
No schedule, but
in time for next Christmas.
This year.
No, not this year. They're not taking that.
This year, 2021. Oh shit, that is next year.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, next year it'll happen.
And I bet a lot of films are going to scoot back from the beginning of the year next year too.
So then, as far as the length goes, it could possibly be a 4-hour director's cut or cut into 6 TV chapters. So we will see what happens next year, but there you go.
That might be the way to watch it.
Supposedly some of the Joss Whedon changes included taking a fight from outer space and putting it in Russia. It includes some terrible it's a really terrible movie.
I would expect no less, to be honest with you. I mean,
okay,
it was something that was a Zack Snyder save job by Joss Whedon, so you don't go into it with all the marbles. Let's put it all that way. I don't think anyway.
We're just gonna mention. Actually, we're not gonna mention here because I want you to keep listening to the episode. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about movies. Now Vernon talked a little bit about some of the stuff he saw. Now, do you want to talk some more about that, or do you want me to go down this list?
Which we can burn on a list.
2 of these.
Yeah, because I saw
burn out the list.
Yeah, I saw a couple of them. Yeah.
So first up, Birds of Prey and what is it? The Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Yeah, it was great. We all should have seen it in the theater.
Thumbs up. Yeah, I give it thumbs up.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is, and it's similar to the TV show I'll mention later. DC is getting all their ducks in a row, and they're figuring it out. Now, whether they can put out product on a regular basis remains to be seen. But the Birds of Prey just followed the formula pretty good, and it was like, let's go for it,
Yeah, I mean, the end is not great,
right?
But the build up to a team, on the other hand, is better than any other superhero movie we've seen. Admittedly, they only had to build up with 4 or 5 characters.
Yeah,
but,
4 or 5 if you want to include what's her name, the little young lady.
Well, I mean, 5 is how many they had in. Well, it's not what they had in Avengers because they added 3 sub-characters. But 5 is.
It's manageable. It's young ladies of independence kicking butt. I mean, it works good. It's the demographics are there. It was fast paced. The villain was convincing, and the girls.
Oh yeah, the villain's great.
And the girls were kind of off key, I guess, a bit. They were attractive, but just not like that perfect attractiveness that you see on a lot of these things, which I liked. I like more realism.
Yeah. So, see that
one. Rent that one. Street.
Sadly, there probably won't be another one. But
probably not. No.
It's a bummer.
She made some hash out of the Harley Quinn. She got 2 movies out of that, so that worked out good for her.
She did get 2. She got 3 movies. She's doing the Suicide Squad sequel that they didn't cancel in time. They didn't realize that it was a terrible idea to make this movie. And we're gonna get a Suicide Squad sequel that's gonna
suck.
Well, it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it'll suck no matter what.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's gonna be it's gonna be interesting to see how it gets received.
How stuck
I guess
is
would
it?
be the way to put it.
Well, what is this, Emma?
But
Who is
Emma?
Who is Emma?
I told you, Emma, the new Jane Austen adaptation, is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is, and I know this now because I have seen 3, including this one, 3 Emma adaptations in like the last 9 months. I saw the one with Gwyneth Paltrow, which is not great. And then I saw Clueless, which is terrible.
Okay.
And then there's this one. And this one, it's really interesting to watch. So Clueless, made in 1995, set in 1995, manages to be more sort of gender regressive for the Emma character than even the Gwyneth Paltrow one. But then the current one, which stars, I don't even know, because I don't know things like this. Directed by Autumn de Wilde, starring, I don't know the names of any of these young people.
I know that
Johnny Flynn is the the love interest, who is not her stepbrother, and then Anya Taylor-Joy is the lead, and it's just it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's
good.
So that one's really good.
Yeah.
Bad Education. You didn't watch this because you don't HBO?
Yeah.
So Bad Education is the true story of the biggest school district financial fraud in history back in the...
Is that Atlanta?
No, Long Island.
Long Island, wow.
They stole $14 million but they stole it over 14 years.
Still, $1 million a year ain't nothing.
$1 million a year. Well, you think that, and then my wife pointed out, yeah, but their budgets are so big that you just got to know how to hide it. And yeah, it's going to get lost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that one, starring Hugh Jackman and Allison Janney, it made a bit of a splash when it got released to HBO. It's okay. It's like a good Hugh Jackman. It's a really, I mean, the thing, my issue with calling it like a different level of Hugh Jackman performances, he's had some really great performances over the years and they've all gone ignored. So it's like this one has yet to go, this one has not yet gotten to the ignored stage. I'm sure it will because it just happens.
Okay.
But it's not terrible. It's all right. Like, I don't know.
Terrible.
It's not terrible. And then my last one before we get to one Vernon and I both saw, Little Women by Greta Gerwig. It's absolutely fantastic. I would say it's the best period drama since Barry Lyndon.
Ooh, you got to see Barry Lyndon?
I got to see Barry Lyndon.
Oh, cool.
And when I was watching it, I'm like, I feel confident in saying this has done the most with the costume genre since Barry Lyndon did something with it.
Oh, wow.
And then I watched Barry Lyndon last week or the week before, and yes, I am correct. That was a correct observation. What Greta Gerwig does with how she changes how fictionalized memoir and autobiography and biography work is amazing. So very, very good. And lastly, The Irishman, which you told me to see.
Yeah. And I hate gangster films.
And he hates gangster films.
Yeah.
And I have gotten to the stage in my life when I realized that Goodfellas is not great, which was also what I thought of it when I first saw it at the age of 13. So I want to know what happened in between now and then.
Well, now you know.
But now I know. But yeah, no, The Irishman is really great. Like, yeah. I mean, I rolled my eyes at it because of the CGI. You totally forget about the CGI de-aging. The only thing you're thinking about is De Niro's creepy eyes.
Yeah, right. Well, these guys, everybody involved with this film is so inured into gangster films that it's like they're punching a clock. Their performances are so flawless that they just punch a clock. They come in, they do their roles, then they punch a clock, go home. I mean, it's just that smooth.
And what's really interesting about Al Pacino in it, and this is the only time I would assume that Al Pacino will ever work with Martin Scorsese, despite them both starting in the 70s and making films at the same time for however long.
When I was a kid, yeah.
When Vernon was a kid, and I was not yet a kid.
Not yet.
But then when I was a kid, they were still making movies. It's not an Al Pacino doing a Michael Corleone.
No.
It's Al Pacino cast because he's the only guy who can do this yelling part in the right way. And it's Al Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa. This should have been its own movie. You could have done your own movie on
right,
it.
you really could have.
But instead,
you're right. There's enough of it there to give you a lot of a weight there. You're right.
Yeah, you get this great late career Al Pacino performance in something, whereas at this point De Niro's kind of like John Wayne in The Searchers or something. Like he's been in this part for so long, and the majority of the movie takes place when he is in his 40s or 50s.
Right.
So
right, there's a journey. It's interspersed with the journey between him and his buddy heading for a wedding.
Yeah,
and
it's
not romantic either. There's no romance at all in this.
And this was one of those movies, much like the Tarantino one, which I haven't seen yet, that got a lot of attention for its lack of female characters, which is actually a big point of The Irishman. Like that don't worry, that gets addressed. But and the other thing is,
no, you're right. I didn't even notice the dichotomy there. But it in a way it may historically portray the situation of the woman within the Italian mafia at that time. But
exactly right, yeah.
But at the same time, whatever women that are involved with these men, well, except for the Irishman, they pretty much call the shots. His best friend is. And everything, and then the other. I mean, they're not weak roles, but at the same time, they're not much. There's not very much there for them to.
Because they're not present in this reality.
No,
so it's very interesting, and it does things that Goodfellas for sure doesn't do, and I assume I'm gonna guess Casino doesn't do either, but I haven't. I need to watch Casino again. And the last thing I want to mention is if you want to watch Martin Scorsese do a 2001 homage, you see that in The Irishman.
Yeah.
There's a full-fledged, amazing 2001 homage in The Irishman. And I was just like, if somebody had told me that this was in here, I would have watched it. I would have watched
the first week it came out.
Right. You need to see Martin Scorsese do a 2001 homage. Even if you don't realize it, you need to see it. It's so good.
It is. And like I say, the fate of the characters is spot on. And I don't like gangster movies, but I love this one. This one was just a perfectly one. It ends perfectly.
Oh, it's so good. Okay. So now I have on here 2 rants.
Quick rants.
Quick rants. So we are going to, what should I give myself? 2 minutes or 3 minutes, Vernon?
3 minutes.
3 minutes each?
Oh, no, 2 minutes. 2 minutes each.
2 minutes each.
Yeah,
all right, we will be starting right now. Okay, so first rant. The new Terminator and Godzilla movies. I watched those during quarantine. Terminator Dark Fate, Godzilla King of the Monsters, right? Or is it? So have you seen either of those?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay, so not only are they really bad, it's King of the Monsters, even though it should be Godzilla King of the Monsters. Anyway, they're both really bad, but they're also not memorable. And that's kind of one of the things I was thinking about when I was making out the agenda and looking through the lists of movies recent movies I've seen. I couldn't tell you anything about Terminator Dark Fate. I read through my review of it, and I can tell you that I believe I am correct in saying that Arnold Schwarzenegger's presence is pointless. And then Linda Hamilton, who's finally back, is terrible. And I mean, it's just like the action scenes were all bad. And I have like no memory of the movie itself. And then I think about Godzilla, and I have no memory of the monsters in Godzilla, which is not surprising because they're barely in there and they're not. Are they?
Well,
are the
that would
monster
suck.
scenes good?
Godzilla.
I don't know.
What
Yeah,
the fuck?
it's 2 hours and 10 minutes, and I think the monsters come in at like the 90-minute mark.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
barely. Yeah. But the rest of it is like a crappy 90s action movie. It's like a
Chuck Norris film.
Godzilla King of Monsters is basically the Roland Emmerich Godzilla movie that people wish they would have gotten in whatever, only without as good of monster stuff.
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, that's
like it was so unmemorable. It's incredible how, anyway. So that's 2 minutes on that one. And so now next one is Star Wars. I watched Solo and Rogue One during quarantine. The only Star Wars thing I need to watch now before I am done is the second Ewoks movie, which I just have not gotten myself in the mood to watch yet. But I am sure it will be better than Rogue One, which is incredibly bad.
Now, is it? Like, I saw one. Is it the done in one with the war story in it?
Yes.
Okay, the girl is the protagonist.
Were you okay with that?
Yeah.
See, okay, so Vernon was okay with it. The last 35 minutes of that movie is just a Star Wars Return of the Jedi, or more like Empire Strikes Back era space battle scene.
Right.
That
the climax
has no stakes, no nothing. It's not a good action scene.
No.
You don't care about any of the people involved. All of it's a reference to something from one of the movies.
Right.
And it doesn't have Baby Yoda. And so it's just like, it's fan service. It's like a direct response to people saying there wasn't enough fan service in
Rogue One.
No, The Force Awakens.
Oh.
It's like a regressive Force Awakens. Anyway, I fucking hated it. I mean, but not in the way that it was like bad. It just wasn't. I mean, like if it had a badder ending, it wouldn't have pissed me off as much.
Right. To me, it was like your typical war film, like not on the level of Sam Fuller or anything like that, but just a war film.
Then
go ahead, Solo. What about Solo? Any good?
Solo's a little bit better because it has an actual story, but there's not enough fan service. So
that's
clearly
2 times in a row. Then
also, the guy who plays Han Solo is not Harrison Ford. So what is this shit? Whereas, we're over. So real quick, Donald Glover's Lando Calrissian impression is spot on.
Okay.
So it's like they went 2 different ways of casting these 2 parts, and it's just bad idea. So that's the end of that rant.
Wow.
But,
so yes. Disney's like burned and crashed on their tail end of the Star Wars.
They totally have burned and crashed on Star Wars, and
too bad.
I feel bad for some of the new Star Wars fans because the second one did have really strong female characters and so on, and like that'll never happen in Star Wars again because it's the most toxic fandom, even ahead of DC. But
so they didn't like it.
Oh no, they hated it. And I've in fact, okay, we're just gonna have this rant right now because I don't know if I've ever mentioned this. I've been sitting next to men, white, middle-class men, 5-ish to 7-ish years older than me, ranting about how The Mandalorian is the greatest thing in the world when I'm like, it's a 30-minute toy commercial for toys that don't exist yet. Like, it's got a really cute thing. It's competently made somehow, competently acted, but this is not good.
Is that 30? Is it like 23 minutes or 30 minutes?
No, they go full 30, I think. But then they go as low as 20 because sometimes they go up to 45. But I'm like, this is not good. Like, let's be,
reasonable.
This tickles an itch. but it is not good. And they hate the new Star Wars movies because the girl. They loved Rogue One. And I'm just like, okay, so you can have blue voting, progressive-ish men who still can't get over the fact that Rose Tico's the, best. But
yeah.
So I don't think it's been in my, craw for 4 months since I did this, because I'm just like sitting there looking at them going, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? And then they were like, what's a great movie? Swingers. And I was like, oh, that's what's wrong with you guys. This is what happened to those guys who in the 90s thought Swingers was great. This is who they grew up into.
Okay. Actually, they probably grew up to the guys that wouldn't put on their ninja mask before they go shopping now.
Oh, I don't know. Some of them, because, Swingers hit a wide... Anyway, we're not talking about fucking Swingers. Okay. On to TV. No more movies. Just movies based on... Or TV based on...
TV has exploded.
Okay, so we've got a long list here, and let's just get rid of Tiger King right now, because I don't want to talk about it at length. But I do just want to acknowledge... I just want to acknowledge that as we talk about the pandemic, the Tiger King phenomenon, which no one is going to remember by the time the 2 Tiger King TV shows come out in 2022, including one starring Nicolas Cage as Joe Exotic.
All right.
Those are not, we are not going to remember why it was so much fun. It was so much fun because of the pandemic. It was so much fun to feel this interconnected.
For me, it was fun to think I was watching a show about a guy called the Tiger King, and I find out there's a whole subculture of millionaire tiger fetishists.
Oh my God, right?
That run cults in our spare time. And I'm like,
so weird.
This is what it's about. I mean, it's not about the Tiger King. He's just the tip of the iceberg, But it's mesmerizing.
Yeah, terrible documentary. But mesmerizing.
Yeah.
But terribly, the documentarians, when, one of my big things is that a documentary, as opposed to a regular, oh shit, we're talking about. Anyway, a documentary needs to be great. It is my opinion. The reason I do not watch more documentaries is because if I watched, I wouldn't actually, be able to justify watching fictional things, because I'm a nonfiction reader. I would be a nonfiction watcher if I got into great documentaries. Tiger King is not a great documentary. It is a very dishonest documentary.
Oh yeah, even when you see who's involved with the beginning video, the gentleman who actually has history in television and sleaze production and stuff.
Oh, that guy's that guy killed tigers.
Oh,
that guy killed. Did you watch the episode where they do the quarantine interview?
Well, he's what?
The last episode?
Yeah, when he's in Norway or something, or what?
Yeah, when he's in Norway. Joel McHale asks him if tigers were getting shot, and his first response is, yeah, I saw Joe shoot tigers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you just fucking said I shot a tiger. You just said it. Of course you did. You're a terrible person.
Well,
you're a bad guy.
But at least at the end they weren't honest about it. The protagonists weren't honest about it. But what you suspected happened, and you find that out. And that's the important thing anyway.
Yes. But the show misgendered someone. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird how bad of a documentary it is. But last thing I want to say about it is best Tiger King casting, even though I don't think they should make a Tiger King movie, because the story itself does not need to be...
It doesn't need to be rehashed again, no.
It doesn't need to be rehashed in this way. Michael Keaton as the Tiger King.
Oh, yeah.
Val Kilmer as... Well, Val Kilmer has since had face cancer, so he
can't.
But... Val Kilmer a few years ago as the guy in Florida with the ponytail and the harem. And then because it's Hollywood, Michelle Pfeiffer is Carol Baskin.
Oh, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Directed
Wait a minute.
by Steven Soderbergh.
Michelle Pfeiffer, she's a lot skinnier than Carol Baskin.
It's Hollywood, Vernon. Okay, and you want to see her fucking with these two. Anyway, so
right.
moving on. Do we want to talk about Legends?
Yeah, why not? It had a new episode last night.
Did you watch it?
I did. It was good.
It was good. The college one. Are you with me on the college one?
What, Legends DC?
Last week's? No, last week's episode.
No, I missed that. Shit.
Oh, you didn't miss a damn thing.
Oh, well, that's weird.
They did a college frat episode set in the modern day. Absolutely pointless, not funny. I'm like, this was cheaper than shooting a real episode. Like, nothing. Like,
well, they used
very.
Well, I understand. Yeah, it's like, well, maybe this is the last season, right?
No, they got renewed.
Oh my god!
Okay, just confirming. If I tell you about next season of Legends, you're not going to be mad.
Oh, I can't guarantee that.
Okay, then I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to give you a spoiler, because I do have a spoiler that's very good. But the next season villains are going to be space aliens.
Oh, okay. So that's which is crossovers.
No. They're just all season long, 15 episodes of them fighting space aliens.
Wow. How are they going to pull that off?
Who knows? But, we have not seen space aliens in the regular Invasion. Invasion was good. But then now that all the universes have combined because of Crisis, we could see aliens from Supergirl and all over the place. So that's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, last night's was all right too. It was.
Last night's was, I like
right. Yeah, Dawn of the Dead stuff. It was pretty good. And I swear to God, John Constantine's going to make love to everybody before he gets done.
Oh God. Okay. Like, not to squeal, but I am so happy with his romance with Zari too.
Yeah.
Like, they're just like, I love her, and this character has only had so much she could do. Well, no, because Tala Ash is like the best actor on the show.
Yeah, he's fun.
No, that's the girl, but whatever.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but anyway.
I thought you were talking about John Constantine.
Yeah, no. Well, no, because that I was very not on board with the John Constantine TV show, and I wasn't on board with this guy's casting because he's a TV guy. He's not. I thought John Constantine needed like a movie star or something, but he has like really done a great job.
Yeah,
and I am now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's fine.
I mean, Legends is that
it still remains to be their best show on the roster.
Oh yeah. And, well, that's hard to say because we don't watch any of the other ones.
No, not really. I hope they've come out of the gutter. I don't know. I'll see what happens.
I read the synopses, and there's nothing there to suggest that they're worth returning to right now. I mean, both of them just have such bloated casts.
Pedestrian plots.
Yeah. I mean, there's just not time for anything, and I mean, I'm going to give Superman and Lois a shot, but otherwise and then, I have to give Batwoman a shot if I like the new cast.
Well, don't forget Stargirl. You should definitely watch the pilot of Stargirl.
Did you watch the pilot of Stargirl?
I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was another thing to me, like Birds of Prey. They're getting it. I mean, there's nothing radical about Stargirl, but they get around the bases fine, and they cross their T's and they dot their I's, and it comes across perfectly fine. You know what I mean? What
is kind of radical about that is that it's Jeff Johns doing it.
Yes, right? I saw that at the beginning. I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
That's his project, and well, I mean, I've heard Doom Patrol is worth it too.
Yeah, I saw the first episode of that, and I've been meaning to go back to that. But
I've heard that there are people who like Titans, but I am not confident in that to actually try. I have no interest in a bad I have no interest in giving 10 minutes to a bad or an hour, or actually we try 3 episodes
Yeah.
usually. So I'm not interested in giving 3 hours to a bad Teen Titans show. Like if it were great, yes, but not a
Yeah,
bad
nothing
one.
in the
I can't
trailers
I can't
made me
do it.
want to watch it, sadly enough. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And I mean, I told you I tried watching Swamp Thing and I was like, I'm too sober for this.
Now,
So
how many
at
episodes did
some
that
point,
get?
10
Okay.
down from
Okay.
13, they truncated it while it was filming. It was so bad.
Oh.
And yeah. And I mean, like, for it's one of those things where I'm like, well, last year on my diet, I wasn't drinking.
God,
So
that's rough.
I was like, I can't watch this without drinking. Like, it's like when I watched Arrow, like when I marathon
Oh, you got to be
Arrow
drinking.
season one
Yeah.
and two, I was
Yeah,
drunk.
that's the only way you can get through
Like
that. Yeah.
it was recommended to me by my friend as a show to watch while
Okay,
drunk.
right.
Like,
Yeah, don't waste time watching it sober. You'll hate it.
yeah, you can't do it. So yeah, so Swamp Thing I'm gonna get to at some point, but when I can drink, which is currently not
Not now.
now. But then, okay, so keeping with superhero stuff, and we'll keep with DC. You watched some
I
Watchmen. How
did.
much Watchmen did you
I finished
watch?
it.
Okay, so you saw how cool the space alien thing would have looked if they'd done it in the freaking movie?
Yeah, that's true. I noticed that right off the bat. I go, are those jellyfish things that they talked about, but never showed? And then I have to say, the first like 2, 3, or 4 episodes are really engrossing, but when Dr. Manhattan comes on, it doesn't make sense to me. And maybe I can run it by you. I just don't see what interest he would have in getting involved with Earth affairs anymore.
Oh no, I have no insight for you, Vernon, other than the people who wrote it have too much hubris.
Well, he was a godlike character, both in the book and in the movie, right? And then, you get him on this TV show, and he just seems like, I don't know, like something out of what's the name of that guy, John Carpenter's movie about the brother from the outer space or something like that? Well,
Starman.
that one too.
That was John Sayles, brother from another
Okay,
planet.
same thing. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, he comes off as kind of stupid and naive, and it was kind of annoying. And then of Sister Night, and I'm like, okay, she's an interesting character, I got it, but her and Blue Guy, come on, Oh well. There were some things I liked about it, but you're right, it fell apart logically for me halfway through it anyway.
So
good production though. Spent a lot of fucking money on it.
Good production, great
Yeah.
actors. Some of the guy who plays Dr. Manhattan's awesome.
Yeah, he was fine.
And he sucked in Aquaman.
Oh, was he Black Manta?
I'm trying to find it here. Let's see. I loved the first
Yeah, the first two were great. Although I was confused, I liked them.
Third one, yeah, by the third one I was falling off. The fourth one, I was really falling off.
I know you finish it because you have to. When you get up to around 4 or 5, you don't.
Well, we have like a TV viewing club, and so I start my post for the 6th one with, "This is where I'd stop watching this damn show." That's the flashback episode to Hooded Justice, and I was just like, I don't feel like these are the right people to make a show about this subject.
Well, you're right. It was kind of baggy, right? Because you have that big plot that he took from the comic book, but it was hubris. Lots of hubris.
I was like, I do not think that you Damien Lindelof, writer of Ultimate Hulk versus Ultimate Wolverine, are going to tell this story right, and you did not. Yeah. So, yeah. But now, speaking of something that was told right, even though it has even bigger changes,
right?
The Boys.
I mean, it's great to see a TV show sig from a comic book, yet take the premises of the comic book and make it into something different that's more palatable for the demands of television shows.
Yes. And it's like, some great performances on this thing. The guy who plays Homelander, the Queen Minerva, like these actors that, I mean, I guess the Homelander guy has been around for a while.
He's
but
perfect.
He
looked
he's
like something out of
perfect.
a Rick Keats
Carl
comic book.
Urban, yeah, Carl Urban is a great butcher.
Oh,
Yeah, it just
yeah, it
works.
Right, exactly. Even the guy plays Huey, and they're all
Yeah,
the whole thing is casted really well. I mean, and they've altered the plot significantly. I mean, the cliffhanger at the end of season 1 is a total
yes,
left-hand turn from the series, but that said, it doesn't hurt it at all, and especially for the newbies, you know what I mean? It didn't bother me, and you and I read the thing.
yeah. Well, it doesn't hurt that Boys falls apart. So.
Yeah. Well, what do you call that? It again, I think, what was it? He was hooked up with Dynamite. And Dynamite will
Yeah,
encourage you to write your ass off and make as many comic books as you can to sell. And there must have been about, 4 or 5 miniseries, and plus you probably could have shaved 15 issues off the original series. But
yeah.
they encouraged him to write his ass off, and and since he owned it, why not, right? Did you see in the show that he's credited as the owner and creative guy is Derek Robertson? I didn't know that Derek Robertson didn't have ownership, or am I wrong on there?
Are you? I mean, that would make sense. I did not pay that much attention.
At the beginning of every episode, they give him credit, and it's almost like an artistic direction, Derek Robertson. I'm like, oh, okay.
There was a thing about how, oh my God, they did a prequel series. That'll show you how much we're on this.
What? The Boys?
Derek Robertson and Garth Ennis did a new Boys, or either did a new Boys series, or yes,
The Boys ended.
The Boys did end. This is a prequel series, and it is due. It apparently came out like maybe last month. I don't know. Maybe it got delayed due to the pandemic. Fuck? But amazing. Guess what? I've got no interest in fucking reading.
Well, it was years after the fact, for Christ's sakes. I guess they felt they could, bring something out for the TV show, which is fine. I have no interest, but it's fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's Dynamite.
Of course they'll publish something. Of course they will. Yeah. They're, Dynamite used to drive me nuts. They're like Marvel. Every time they reprint classic series in these like volumes, they would jigger the formats and include different issues, so you could never like read one format to another. You'd have to just stick with that format all the time. Otherwise, your books.
But they do Annie January well, right? Like that's another thing. On the show, they do Annie January,
yes,
right?
She's perfect.
Does that sound right? Yes. Okay. Yeah.
She's perfect.
It's been. I watched it a while ago, and it's I don't know. I got to watch the credits. So yeah.
The Boys is highly recommended. It's not as gross as the original one. It gets gross once in a while, but it's nowhere near the other.
It's not. They're not doing the X-Men.
No, right. I was just thinking about that too, because I said they left. Even though they mentioned Tech Night, they don't like he's not showing up yet on the show or anything, and I'm like, it's probably good because they don't really want to get distracted from what they're trying to do.
But yeah, and there's no like the tone of the show is gonna get harsh. Like the finale, like my wife was cringing while she was watching some of the scenes, but it's never gonna get as like misanthropically just dark.
No, not like
it can't. Like that. There's no way. Yes, you are right. I'm reading the credit right now. Based on the well, or did you say Garth has 2 credits?
I don't know. It just seems like Garth has, which he probably should get the.
Well, his name is. Let me see if he's got a second credit. Anyway, while I'm doing that, do we want to just touch in on Sabrina since it's the last comic book related one?
That sounds fine with me. I think that's a good way to do it.
Okay, so I finally watched Sabrina, which Vernon's been telling me to watch since the beginning. I'm not done yet. I have the first half of season 2. Yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, it's a great production. I have some issues with it, but it's a really good show. There's some great performances on it. It's just too long, like 20 episodes. Like they split the first season into two parts, and it still feels like it's supposed to be one season,
Yes.
and it's too
Too.
much.
It's a lot. Like
we
I don't know. Like they didn't have. Sabrina has overarching arcs. There's like sometimes there's individual stories, but there's arcs that go for 3 or 4 episodes at a time, and you have to keep up. That's just it. Yeah, and the amount of characters.
yeah, it's just so much, and so especially for where they end it. Like I got to the end of it and I was like, oh, so this could have been a 10 episode series based on how much actually matters.
Well, there's 10 and 10, right? Yeah, or something like that. So it's not overwhelming sized. What I was amazed about it was they were able to take enough of what's the guy's name who wrote the comic series that we like so much.
Aguirre
Right.
Sakisa.
He was able to keep as much of his stuff as possible, and yet he filled it in for television quite nicely. The ants have a much larger role in the show, and there's a lot of characters and stuff. And I go, this to me was a lot more successful than maybe the Archie one or some of the other CW stuff, because the characters they have good cast members and they're all pretty solid.
Yeah.
I think the third season is pretty solid as well. I could see somebody dropping off at the end of it just because how far can they go with this? Because you have to keep upping the fantastic. That's the problem.
Right. I think they've only got one more. They've only got they don't have a third season, or they don't have a. So wait, they've got season 1, part 1, season 1, part 2, season 2, part 1, which is season 3. So the next 10 episodes are the last, and I don't think they're planning on continuing.
That would be nice.
Hopefully they did something good, because they've already filmed it.
Okay, that's fine. I enjoyed season 3. I thought they kept up the momentum nicely, and the characters were still in solid. Again, it's got that it's a Netflix show, and it's got like it trolls to certain audiences to some degree, and there's a lot of characters. But other than that, I thought it was fine, and I enjoy the immediate family of characters. They keep me on the show a lot.
Yes. Yeah. So it's one of those shows where once the cast is in sync, you just wish it was just character based as opposed to
right. They have they have to keep doing the fantastic plots and one upping themselves. Like when you get to season 3 where she becomes Queen of Hell, that's about as far as you can go, I think. I don't know what you could you could do with her after that. You know what I mean? So I was really involved with that aspect of it. But again, it portrays on you wanting to buy in on a character and keep wanting to find out what happens to her, which admittedly I do. But like I said, 3, but now that you say the 4th is it, then that might be it for me. But I enjoy it though. Yeah. Escapism.
Yes. So let's do What We Do in the Shadows.
All right, that's a good way to finish the TV stuff.
We have more TV, that? Vernon. There's still more TV.
Oh, sorry. Let's see here. I should be looking at it. Let me turn that schedule back on here. What do you call that? I just got turned on to the show. I'd heard about it, and luckily I was able to watch it in the movie and the TV show, and it just gets better. I mean, we're at the infancy of something that's really turning into something quite charming indeed.
Yes. The first season is good. It's really good. The movie's good,
but then the being TV in the
show,
half-hour format is much better.
Yeah, and it just works out better.
I can't remember. Is Colin in the movie? Okay.
No, and Colin has become this breakout thing. Like the second season has just I was worried about some of the plot choices, but no, it's great. Like they're doing it all great. And then the latest episode is sort of finally a Matt Berry centric episode.
Laszlo.
Laszlo, because you've never seen IT Crowd, you've never seen Toast of London. Matt Berry, has his own shows in the
You know,
UK.
it's just like
So
me discovering Ricky Gervais, but I'll finish with that one later. Uh, there's like,
yeah,
is he British? Okay, I
yes,
mean, there's just so much British television that is just out there that you just find because this guy kicks onto something that kicks here in America.
yeah. So hopefully it's going to get a lot more Matt Berry fans. So, but and then the Colin Robinson, yeah. I mean, this show is just
What's my
fantastic.
favorite
So
phrase? Hitting on all six cylinders. It's hard to imagine right now. Like it's starting to peak because the social commentary in this show, and it is so ingrained with what happens to the characters on a given episode. I mean, the Super Bowl episode was just probably one of the best
yeah.
social commentary things I ever saw of comedy on television, just because it was so fucking hilarious.
Well,
And the
I
and
mean,
Colin followed it, but go ahead, please.
they have a lot of potential with the pandemic next year.
They probably do. You're right. I
Yeah,
go, but no, now they do. They're doing episodes now, or is this? I think everything's in the can now, right? Yeah.
everything's in the
Okay.
can. Yeah.
Oh Jesus! I mean, yeah, or have a pandemic special or something like that. Why let a
Yeah,
good crisis go
that
to
would be
waste?
amazing if they did a pandemic
Yeah.
special. Yeah. So hopefully that'll. Last season it was not. Its renewal was a surprise in some ways, but this season it seems to be a lot more popular thanks to people watching more TV. So, yeah, hopefully we've got at least another year of what we do in the shadows, if not more, because
Oh,
I mean,
it's
yeah,
undescribable. I mean, to anybody who's listening to us who doesn't know what it's about was it four vampires that live in this house on Staten Island, and they're all hundreds of years old, and it's a comedy, a black comedy, and I've been laughing out loud. I mean, in the one episode called Brain Scramblies, where they go to the what they
oh
consider
god,
to be the
that's
Superb
yeah.
Owl Party, which actually reads Super Bowl Party, and the next door neighbors are fucking priceless.
Oh, it's so good. Just the acting is so good.
I mean,
Oh,
it was just funny as shit. And the Colin episode where he plays a psychic vampire as opposed to the other three, which are blood vampires, and he just sucks emotion out of people. So he has a job at a corporation, and he finds himself. One of the episodes is called Colin's Promotion, where he, through no fault of his own, works his way up the ladder at this company. And it is just such wry commentary on modern life and jobs and office work. It's just hilarious.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah, don't miss that show. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
That's a good way to end. Don't miss that show.
So that I believe is the last show that you and I have any crossover on. So do you want to do your Ricky Gervais and then I will do my four and a
Well, I've
half
been
TV
talking too.
shows?
Let's see here.
How do you want to
You know
split it?
what? Go ahead. You go ahead and do a couple of them, and I'll throw in Ricky Gervais, and you can finish off with your last two.
Okay, so I'll just do new stuff first,
Sure.
then that'll work. So let's see. Streaming Dead to Me, starring Christina Applegate and Linda
Ooh.
Cardinelli. I just watched all of those because a friend of my wife's was watching it. And so she watched it, and then I watched it so we could watch the second season together. First season is bad. James Marsden is great, but the first season's pretty bad television or whatever you would call streaming.
How do
Like,
shows survive that?
it's bad. Well, they probably had renewed it for a second season based upon the signing Christina Applegate and Linda Cardinelli or Cardellini. And so the second season's a lot better and even good, like really good at times. But I mean, the first season is poorly written. The direction is bad. And they never find the tone. And the second season, they at least they at least find the tone
Okay.
more often. And what it is an absurd comedy about it's an absurdist, wacky 40-something white woman comedy. And they hit that second season. First season, they're trying to do some dramatic thing and fail. The thing that works in both seasons is James Marsden, the guy who played Cyclops in the original X-Men. He's great. And it's a shame that he's never gotten a good project, frankly. Like, I remember the first time I was like, wait a second, James Marsden is good, was in Superman Returns, where he's actually more super than the Superman, just as the regular guy. But then he's great in this show. Second season, could you watch it without having seen the first season?
That's tough on a lot of streaming shows.
Yes, but you also don't need to watch it. Like, there's a teenage son on there who's really annoying. And at points in the second season, you can see where they take notes from the first and like fix things. And they tried fixing this kid and they can't because the actor's bad too. But it's not, it's quick. My wife watched it in a sitting, the first season in a sitting.
My wife could do that too. I guess we're very similar wives.
Yeah, they're half hour, or that season, I think, were less than 30 minutes. And so, like, she just marathoned them one afternoon, waiting for me to get off work. Because pandemic.
Yeah, really, you're at home sitting there watching television. What the fuck,
But the thing about it that stands out a lot is one of the second season actresses, her name is it Natalie Morales? Let me look real quick. I want to get this right. Yes, Natalie Morales, who did a show called The Middleman, which was based on a comic book. I'm going to watch that. I'm going to watch The Middleman because she's that good. But I'm going to watch The Middleman. So that one. And then I also, last night, I think we watched the new Jerry Seinfeld special, which I was planning on writing about, and I'm not going to write about, but then I might write about not writing about it because comedy specials are weird, and like I want to talk about that. But if you are a Seinfeld fan, you should give it a shot. I kind of was until you should give it a watch. Anyway. You should watch it. But I will warn you, in the 20 years it's been since, or however, how long is it? That's how long it's been since Seinfeld was on TV, right? And I didn't watch Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. I watched a few of them, but I might have watched almost the entire first season, but I have no memory of them. Well, I mean, they were 7 minutes or something. No. They weren't full episodes. So, I mean, and they're like documentary interviews. So, but Comedian's great. The Jerry Seinfeld movie that he made about being a stand-up comic called Comedian is exceptional, though it probably has a bunch of poorly aged Bill Cosby.
I remember him on Johnny Carson. But he was a very promising young guy. His stand-up. Yeah.
His stand-up's real, and that I'm telling you for the last time is one of the few stand-ups that I watched, but since then I haven't really gotten into stand-up, but like I've seen all the Carlin.
Right, the Groundbreakers are the only ones you really want to watch on stand-up comedy for the most part.
Yeah, and I'll warn you, the direction of this, the Netflix stand-up special direction is really shitty, I've noticed, and this one's really bad. But it's not up to par with what HBO was doing in the 80s.
Hey, that's budgets, man. We got to crank out content.
Well, they want to crank out content. That's true. But it's really funny. Definitely check it out. And you'll be weirded out if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm to realize that some of Larry David is in Jerry Seinfeld, and some of Jerry Seinfeld is in Larry David, because Seinfeld makes noises that Larry David makes.
I've been saving Curb Your Enthusiasm. Like, I've seen a couple of stray episodes, but I'm dying to go back and watch it one day. It's like,
we should watch. Okay, well, I need to watch that again from the start. So if you want to, if we want to simultaneously rewatch Curb, I'm down.
I'll tell you what, when I get done with a couple of these other ones I've got on tap, I'll be happy to join that one, because I've had it on my queue, and I'm like, I want to watch it, So yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that for the podcast, Vernon. For the
Oldies.
podcast. Okay. And then real quick, my last one, All Rise,
I
which
know that
was
one. That's a scary
like
show.
the only
Oh,
network
okay.
show. Scary?
No,
No,
no, no.
that's
The
Evil.
Evil wasn't scary.
Evil's the
All
scary
Rise.
one
That's
that
the
I
one with
like.
the black judge. Yeah, 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 yeah. I
Yeah.
don't. I saw that one, and I'm not going to
Hey,
judge it or anything. It just that it was so odd.
it's odd. It's like a watered down Major Crimes, which is a watered down closer, but not as good as either. But All Rise isn't as good as either of those shows for lots of reasons. But it's coming back next season, and that's only of note because it stars
Christy
because
Love.
its two leads are great. It stars Misty from Netflix, Luke Cage, and it stars Bullseye from Netflix,
Oh
Daredevil,
wow.
and they're both
Oh wow.
great. So, yeah, I mean, they're good on the show. They're not bad. They're never bad on the show.
But
But
isn't it funny that
you
the
know,
lead on this All Rise, and then the guy that played Luke Cage is on Evil, and these are like not as good as shows as they were when they were doing Marvel. That's really funny
right?
because they really shined in Marvel
That'll
shows.
tell you. Going from streaming to broadcast
It
is a
seems to
step
be,
down.
doesn't it? Because it's not hot anymore.
It really does. And there's like other people on All Rise that were on better shows. The girl on it, like the young lawyer girl, is what was her name? She was Cisco's girlfriend
Oh,
on
okay,
Flash.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the one who wasn't as good as when he was flirting with the criminal girl. But it's like she's not up to snuff as far as some of the actors
It's
are.
weird,
It's a
yeah,
weird time.
definitely weird.
And they do their last episode of the season was a Zoom produced episode, which you don't want to be watching because that's your life. And also, there's cyber sex, and so
No, you
you
don't
don't
want
want
cyber
that
sex
either.
now.
So no, you don't want to talk about cyber sex, especially not
Right.
with characters you don't like, because you want Bullseye to get with this other woman. But there's this really weird thing, and the show never talks about this, but I will
Okay.
mention it here. Okay, so Bullseye and Misty are friends from
All right.
college. Okay. You then meet their third friend from college, who is a empowered black woman, basically like Misty. And you find out that Bullseye was like in love with her in college, but apparently they like never got together. But like it was well known that like he was in love with her, but still
Oh
her
my.
friend. And so I'm like, at first I'm like, okay, so what's this saying about
Right.
Misty, right? And then he starts dating this like Barbie, and I'm like, but what's that say about the Barbie? Like, this is a very weird like. So okay, he doesn't like. We're not like fetishizing, but he does. And when he doesn't engage his fetish, he goes to Tommy Lahren.
It's
Like,
very weird.
it's
That's very
weird.
weird.
It's just
Yeah,
weird.
especially
Very
when you
weird.
got like
Yeah. But the show's very weird with all that stuff because it wants to be more woke than it is. Or not woke than it is, but more woke than it can be being a CBS show.
it's just
Let's just put
bizarre.
it like that.
That and Evil are
Yes,
both bizarre
bizarre show.
shows.
Yes, I'm fingers crossed that Monique's not going to want to watch Evil next season.
Oh, it's fucking awful. I'm sorry. The best part about it is the
I
girl he's
cannot
working with, right?
stand
The
this
woman
show.
who's a mom. That's but everything
Yeah,
else is
she's
downhill. I
good,
don't even like
but
Luke Cage.
her family
Well,
sucks.
when Luke
Everything
Cage is so cryptic, I
sucks.
just don't give a shit.
I mean, that's the other thing is, and we talked about this. We talked about this back on Comics Fondle when we covered Luke Cage.
No,
He's not the best actor.
plays a type, and that's it. Don't put him in any more over in his head than you get him.
Don't
No.
try to stretch him out. Like, let's get this. Okay, so you're gonna do your Ricky Gervais rant, and then I will touching on 2 rewatches, and then we are actually ready
Oh
to
my,
do the
okay. Well, let
outro.
me jump
Then,
in. Ricky
yeah,
Gervais, who's certainly gotten more than his share of attention and gets on everybody's nerves. I'm like starting to like pick the layers of an onion skin off to find more and more about him, and I'm really enjoying his stuff so much. I mean, a lot of people like his Afterlife series, which I enjoy. I still think Derek is his number one, but Afterlife, the second series that's now on Netflix, is just another outstanding things. And you just can't imagine a guy doing a 180-degree turn and being this sensitive. Like, oh, he actually thinks about these things. But Gervais is really a lot more talented. He's like you say, the English like hid him away from us all this time, and now we get him. But I don't necessarily like the shtick he sells himself here in America as an asshole. But it's a reaction. I think that's like his character, so that doesn't really bother me. But Afterlife has been really impressing me, and I think Gervais should rule the world. That's all I can tell you. There you go.
well, okay.
Call me a
So
groupie.
then, I still need to watch at least one of those.
Derek was the one
right?
that make the hankies come out.
All right. But I mean, and I didn't say this about Seinfeld because I might actually put it in the post, but during the Seinfeld special, you realize that if we lived in a different reality, the best final Woody Allen movie would be the one starring famously disinterested in being in movies, Jerry Seinfeld. But we don't live in that reality. It's sad we don't, but that's just like you're watching it and you're like, oh wow, that would be a great anyway. So my rewatches, we are currently going through Mrs. Fisher's Murder Mysteries, which is a show from 2013 that you might even like, but your
British,
wife definitely should watch.
Close enough.
Australian, set in the 20s, about a rich woman who solves crimes, but she's basically Batman without the costume. She's like the Shadow, actually, because she has all these people who help her. It's really good. And they handle, modern for the time social issues, but they also comment on present day ones. And then you have the sad realization that, yes, the 20s probably were better for some of this stuff. And then they were bad for another 100 years for a lot of people. So but they mentioned we just started season 3 and they just mentioned the year of something. And I'm like, okay, see, the problem is once the Great Depression hits, once, the stock market crashes, this is all going to stop and it's all going to get terribly serious and awful for these characters. But like for this moment in time, they're able to shine in this way. And it's very good. Very good. A lot of people like it, and they are not wrong.
Thank you. I like that.
So yes, and I told you to at least have Gene watch it. But yes, you too might like it because she's rich Selena Kyle, so she's like 1960s, maybe 70s Earth 2, whichever Selena Kyle was the rich one, like the golden age one, who was like a society burglar. Imagine her, but as a good guy.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's awesome.
I'll definitely have to.
Yeah,
you got me curious enough to I want to watch the first episode and see how it works.
Yeah. And then also we are rewatching Frasier because we started watching some Frasier during quarantine, and we're like, you know what? Let's just start from the beginning instead of picking out episodes from throughout. And so we are a couple episodes into the second season, and it is great. Frasier is great. It hits some greatness mid first season, and second season it is keeping it up. It is as fantastic as it was the last time I watched.
I remember seeing them when they first came on NBC. It was like once a week or whatever, like all the broadcast stuff is. And I just enjoyed the sophistication of the characters and how multi-textural they were. And again, it's like a really good comedy kind of seasons itself. Like the first season is usually not the best one to watch because they're trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do with it, And then eventually, if all the things fall in the right category, then all the cast and the characters just start clicking. So about halfway through the first season, you think it becomes masterpiece level then.
Yeah, and it really does. It really holds up. David Hyde Pierce. I forgot how much I love David Hyde Pierce, but I'm back to I need to see all the David Hyde Pierce I can. Like, he's so good. That's his brother. He's so good at the stuff. And I mean, Kelsey Grammer's really good too. And of course, some things don't age great, but
dad was great.
Yeah, the dad. Well, the dad reminds me of you.
He reminds me of my dad.
I'm sitting there and I'm like, why does he remind me of Vernon so much? Because he's got a little dog now is why.
I don't have the cane yet.
He's got a little dog. He sits in front of the TV and he drinks his beer. I'm like, you're throwing a stack of comics next to him and you got Vernon. Like,
yeah, I love Frasier. I enjoyed that quite a bit. But what was I saying? Like, I'm involved with this goofy one called Mom, and I can't remember the two actresses that lead it. But the first season, the first half of the first season, is such a train wreck of ideas that you see the potential. And by the time you get into the second season, they've completely reinvented the show and gotten rid of half the cast members and made it the two ladies, the mom and her daughter, the focus of the whole thing. And it's just much better. But I can just see, like, when you get like genius level people working on TV, how it just develops organically. It's really a pleasure to behold.
Yeah. So, I mean, Frasier holds up. Check that out. I don't know if you can stream it anywhere. Have you heard of Tubi?
Well, what do you call that?
Tell people
Tubi's good. What do you call that? But a lot of these shows are rerun on broadcast TV. Like here, WMAQ has 5.2.
Okay.
And it's on for, I could say 2 or 3 hours a day, episodes here. And you just watch it on something else. You know, it's still running around free.
Nice. So that wraps up our episode.
Yeah, no kidding. Now this episode turned out long enough that you could stay at home with your coronavirus and listen to it all in chunks. Quite magnificent.
Yes. So we will, in the spirit of that, we will leave it alone lengthwise for what's got to be.
Don't tell them before they get in.
Almost 2.5 hours. This is the end, Vernon. They know. They've been here for a while. I think I'm going to put in the description. You can pause this. There are pause points. That's what I'll put in the
Take it in the shower with you.
There are pause points. So hit us up and let us know what you think about separate episodes for
subject matters and formats. Yeah.
Subject matters. How would you hit us up? You're going to hit us up. You can hit us up. You can send an email to VR. So that's Velocity Raptor VR at thestopbutton.com. I will have the email address set up. Or no, actually, you know what? Hold on.
What? Okay, go ahead.
You can send. You're not going to have to email anymore, Vernon. We're professionals.
Damn.
Okay. Hold on. Here we go. You can send an email on this to... hold on. If you want to send... Okay, so if you want to send us an email, I'm going to set up this email, so I'm going to do it now. You're going to send us an email at VRP, that's Velocity Raptor Pizza, at thestopbutton.com. If you want a direct link to episodes for some reason, if you didn't find this in a podcast catcher somehow, just go to VRP, Velocity Raptor Pizza, at thestopbutton.com. So it's VRP at the email and VRP.thestopbutton.com to get a hold of us. Check out the Comics Fondle podcast at CFP.thestopbutton.
Those are great coronavirus time killers.
Exactly. And you'll find out about a bunch of great comics that if you just started reading, you don't know about, or if you took a break from reading, Or even if you were reading, like, what if you were reading mainstream crap? We didn't
Andrew and I
cover a
don't
lot of
cover
mainstream
shitty
crap.
comics.
I mean, that was at the point where we probably didn't cover a single crossover.
Well, there
on
weren't
that
too many
show,
Marvel or
when you think
DC
about
titles. I should warn them in advance.
Well, yeah, but if you were reading that crap, then
True.
this is your way to get good stuff. Because it
Become
was,
enlightened.
Yeah. What else? So, yes, and so let us know what you think about the episode length. The current plan, if we have enough content, is going to be
3 to 4, I'm thinking.
3 weeks.
Yeah, depending on what we got.
Between episodes. Yeah, but 3 to 4, depending on what we got. And let's see. Podcast places have reviews. Leave us a good review.
No, don't leave bad reviews.
Don't leave a bad review.
I don't care. No.
Don't be an asshole. Like, yeah, I don't need to hear about my voice. I'm aware that it sounds like this. Otherwise, life would be a lot different for me. Leave me alone. Yeah. So there you go.
I think that's got it covered. We just want to make sure that people are listening and become enlightened by our announcements, as it were. That's the main thing.
Yes. And so thanks for listening to this giant size first episode. No idea. This is not the intended length of an episode, but I do think we are going to end up probably with 45 minutes for comic talk plus whatever opening banter we have, and then another hour for movies and TV. Or maybe more like 40. So we could do 2 45 minutes, but I think 90 is probably going to be about right when we're not going through stuff that we haven't talked about
We've
yet.
Got a lot of energy built
like
up
we are
during
now.
coronavirus.
So, yeah. Right. It only occurred to us last week.
I got so much time on my hands, what the hell?
Which is weird.
Coronavirus and being unemployed, Jesus, I'm telling you, I got time for podcasts.
Now, Vernon, I wasn't going to tell him we were going to set up a Patreon until next time. That's where they send us money, Vernon.
I need to eat. I need to eat yesterday.
All right. So preview, there will be a Patreon next episode for reasons that we will discuss at the beginning next episode. But it will always be like this. So, yes, you'll just get an ad-free one. They'll get an ad-free one. So that's how that works. I listen to enough podcasts now. I know how it works. And the platform has gotten far enough along that we can do it that way. So, yeah. So that's it for this episode of Visual Reflux. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, we have a nice coronavirus holiday together. Just stay safe. Observe social distancing. Don't do anything that you're not supposed to, because it's not worth it. Just stay at home and listen to our podcasts.
Just do it.
Thanks for your tolerance.
Wear the mask.
Ciao.
All right.
Thanks, kids. All right.
There we go.
That's good.
Well, I'm going to cut it off before then. Okay, we promise we will be back before it's been another year and a week.
That's
so
true.
You don't have that long to wait.
Yeah, I like that better.
Thanks for listening. Yes.
All right.